Welcome to session number 8 of the second edition of the ACMHangouts series hosted by Arts Council Malta. As you know by now, during the session we discussed a number of different topics related to the cultural and creative sectors with a specific focus on the new strategy which is currently being developed by Arts Council Malta. And today, well, I'm taking the opportunity, Marianne is here. I would like to thank Arts Council, thank Marianne and all the team for enabling these conversations. We had a number of different interesting conversations throughout this year. And today we're going to also be discussing a very important and relevant subject, which is the subject of arts and education. Just a reminder from our end that all the sessions are being streamed on the Arts Council Facebook page and are then available in case you'd like to refer to them at a later date. Our panel today is made up of Ms. Marianne Kauki, who is the Director Funding and Strategy at Arts Council Malta, Victor Gallia, who is the Head of College Network Michel Anton Vassalli College, which is the network of specialized schools for the visual and performing arts education, and Lorraine Aquilina, Director of Projects at SOPA and Chair of the Arts Education Subcommittee for MEIA. Throughout the session, we are also going to have a number of different interventions via Zoom by Christa Catania, who is the Education and Development Associate at Arts Council Malta, Simon Attard, who is the Head of School Malta Visual and Performing Arts School, and also Rosetta De Battista, trained pianist, educator, therapist, and also consultant at the Malta Trust Foundation. They are all going to be joining us today via Zoom. So in today's session, as I mentioned, it's going to be focusing on arts and education, and we're going to be asking some very important questions. The value of access to education in arts and culture, the investment and infrastructure in place, and also what is needed at this point in order for arts education to flourish, access to culture, the COVID-19 situation, and we are also going to be discussing a way forward after these challenging times, as well as learning through art. So as you can see, we have a very busy schedule for just 1 hour. We hope we'll be able to make it in time. But now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Marianne Kauke for a brief introduction about today's subject. Marianne?
Thank you, Elaine. In fact, I was going to tell you how long are we going to take? 12 hours. It's like 1 hour, yes, and it's quite a hefty subject. And all those questions are being tackled in different ways. I take the opportunity to thank colleagues for finding the actual time to make it. As I see all the people you mentioned, they're super busy. I don't know if it's education or it's arts or it's both. Very super busy. Why? I think to date, as I have to make a declaration here, okay? As Arts Council Malta to date, I believe we have left a lot behind when it comes to arts education and education in the arts. So that's a disclaimer to start with, and thereafter, what's happening? As you mentioned, well-mentioned, strategy 21 to 25, which is being evaluated, consulted, and hopefully we're looking, the light at the end of the tunnel started to actually show now, and we're looking at a document being launched very shortly to be, once again, public consulted with everybody who would like to give feedback and be involved in the process. And I have to say, from the initial meetings and public consultation groups and focus groups we had, individual interviews, meetings with public cultural organizations, education featured as a priority constantly. So if I have to pinpoint on something, actually 2 things: education and the building bridges element, which also features within education. As Arts Council Malta, we strongly believe that we need to build these bridges with whatever sector, whether it's social sector, whether it's the economic, whether it's the industrial, whether financial, digital, and education features on all of them. It's amazing how important education is. When we say education, as you very well started with your intro, you boiled it down into various points. I look at it as threefold. Primarily, we have education, arts education, when you have primary, secondary, also tertiary. We're addressing the tertiary because to date, if something was done, it happened strictly with primary and secondary. We're moving also onto the tertiary element. Arts needs to be accessible. They need to be accessible. So we are looking into providing mentoring for educators, general educators who are in class on a daily basis, and also specialized educators, the secondary school educators. We're going to looking forward to provide them an arts and culture background. So when they can lesson plan, teach, deliver, etc., they can always refer or have arts and culture at the background, foreground, middle ground in their deliveries. That's one point. Then we're looking into training the trainer. So it's very important, actually, we need to provide them with the sort of education and coaching. Further to that, we also have artists who are specialized in their field, in the genre, whether it's theater, whether it's dance. And they might be missing or lacking or not strong enough with regards to the pedagogical element. So they feature weak in delivery or sharing the information. So we're looking as Arts Council very much into training the specialized artists to be able to share the knowledge, because we're also seeing a lacuna in that area. Obviously, the third element would be education in the arts. To date, and at least before the Malta Visual Performing Arts School, as I saw, there's going to be also Miss Simona Tar, the head, and we also have Mr. Galia, who is the principal of the Visual and Performing Arts Schools. They always have been treated as the hobby element. We doubt our lofsinar, the afternoon classes, and we lack to realize that these schools, and there are also private entities, have created the artists, most of the artists we have today. So if you see the full-time artists that we have today, they made their own private investment. They invested in their private time as well to actually learn and go out there and go full-time. So we are looking into addressing also education in the arts with state institutions and also private institutions. Now, with private institutions, we have started off already through the restart schemes. I'm sure most have heard of these restart schemes. We have literally designed a scheme for education in the arts. So arts schools, arts entities, arts companies that provide education, are given the necessary support. This is new. This is new to us. In fact, we're still in pilot stage. I understand there is Christa, who is the Education and Development Associate, can give us maybe also more details in that regard. And so that's very important. Finally, last but not least, I have to conclude. Yes, I will. It's the training within the sector. So continuous training. Even when it comes to me and you, Elaine, we need to keep training, we need to keep updated, we need to keep informed. And that's very important. Yes. So when we talk of education, it's very huge.
Exactly. Thanks, Marianne. And I think your introduction shows exactly that, the fact that education has a number of different elements which are all important, are all relevant. But I'd like to start with arts education, and I would like to actually quote from the draft National Cultural Policy, which is currently being also discussed. And the policy states, and I quote, it recognizes that education in arts and culture is fundamental to build a society that develops its creative potential as part of the well-being of citizens. And I would like, Victor, to start with you and to ask you your reflection about this statement, which is obviously the policy is stating very, very clearly that arts education is important. It's important for our younger generations to access, to learn music, to experience arts in general. So why is this?
As you rightly pointed out, the draft national culture policy brings, in my opinion, a paradigm shift in the sector, because now we are talking about the right of the learner to access arts education. Now this is new, because when we talk about education in general, the academics, people tend to talk about what they refer to as core subjects, the core subject. Now, what is the core? What is the core? And that had always been the battleground within the education sector itself, not with the word outside at the moment. I'll get into that. So what is a core? Now, through this national policy, it's going to bring the change, I believe the change needed in the education sector, to start considering more seriously the benefits, after all, of this sector. Why do students, what do students achieve by studying general education in music, arts, drama, dance? And obviously one have to say that there had been services in this sector for a good number of years. I can talk about the network of schools which I had, the visual and performing arts schools. We're referring to the Malta School of Art here in Valletta, the Malta School of Music, the Malta School of Drama and Dance, as well as the Gozo Visual and Performing Arts School, and VPA School as well. There is a history, there is a long history about that. I mean, if one look at the Malta School of Art, we're talking about almost 100 years ago, where there was a movement of local artists then, which they asked that they need to have a place where they can study and develop this curricula. And it was then that the first state-run School of Art was developed. Following that, in the 70s, then there was the Johann Strauss School of Music, now the Malta School of Music. And later on in the 80s, there was the development through the British Council of the first Malta School of Drama. And in the 90s, there were a development on the island of Gozo of creating these specialized schools as well. Yes, these schools had been always considered, as Ms. Kauki said, as the after-school programs, after-school activities, meaning that some people might see them as a second class. You know what I mean? Though the first class is the mainstream education, what is happening actually in a primary school and in a secondary school or in further education. One step forward, I believe, in the vision of the Ministry for Education recently was the establishment of this college. As we all know, in Malta we have the system of colleges. We have 10 colleges. This had been the 11th colleges. Originally, when it started, they wanted to incorporate all the sector which is non-compulsory. And I believe me that it was very hard for somebody to focus on both the post-secondary academia as well as the visual and performing arts, because they are two different fields altogether. Until it was established as the Michel Anton Vassalli to focus on the national schools for the visual and performing arts. Since then, the main focus was accessibility. How are we going to improve the accessibility in these schools for learners, whether they are young or older? And on the other hand is to give a value to that learning, and that is very important, because nowadays people, rightly so, they ask about the benefits of learning. So you learn something, first of all, for your own fulfillment. That is never, should never be underestimated. But we wanted to give a value of learning in these aspects. And in fact, now, very recently, the college has been established as an institution for further higher education by the Malta Authority, and we are licensed to provide accredited courses all across the schools.
Victor, you mentioned the values and the benefits. So from your experience, kind of what are the benefits which you have
Well,
seen, witnessed, experienced directly through the children?
we only have 1 hour now, minus the time passed, but to talk about the benefits, the education benefits of the visual performing arts requires much more time. But mainly, in my opinion, straightforward, I would say discipline. Discipline is the basic set of tools to solve life problem. We all know that. And the people who are entering into the visual and performing arts education, they require the sense of discipline. And discipline on yourself, which you will definitely find it even in, and this is researched, in the academic subjects. So somebody who is focused on art, for instance, whether it is painting, music, dance, or drama, that will definitely also help automatically the brain. This is something physiological and scientifically proven, that people tend to focus much more on what they are doing. But more than that is the benefit of cultural appreciation. People learn to live with each other more, better, in harmony.
Yes.
Those are the
certainly.
main 2 points, but of course there are many other benefits which, of course, there are also the economical aspects, and I think we lack a bit of input here, and I believe that in order for us, the education sector, to further improve the sector, we have to realize that we need to work hand in hand with other entities outside the state institutions, where their focus is much more on the performances and on productions and in the world of work, in the world of work, where parents of even young students will understand that this pathway in the visual and performing arts education may lead to career prospects.
Exactly. And we'll have the time to discuss specifically this a little later on, even with Simone. So Lorraine, it's not just important for children to have access to arts education, but to proper and to a sound education. So from your experience, what constitutes proper arts education? What makes it better for children?
Look, I think we experienced a boom in arts education in the 1990s. That's when we had ballet schools before. We had some individual teachers giving music lessons, but the 1990s there was a sudden boom, and schools opened, and we had the first students attending lessons and actually starting to develop the skills. And in fact, since then, we have seen not only an increase in the number of people taking up the arts as a career, but also artists actually in Malta as professional artists and also abroad. We have quite a number of artists abroad who are making a name for themselves. I can mention Nico Ajuz-Darmanin. I can mention Brenda Lee Smith, who's a dancer, and now recently there's also Phoebe Schembri, who has just obtained a contract with the Munich Ballet. So these are a result of the schools who have invested in not only opening up spaces which are suitable for the training, so they have the right flooring, they have the right sound in the room, but also invested in their teachers. It hasn't been something which has happened overnight, because obviously when we started in the 1990s, there weren't trained teachers in the arts as such. So there were people who were interested in the arts, who went on courses, who had the pedagogical skills to be able to to read up and change and give, sort of pass on this information. Since then, obviously, people have started training in actual arts education. In fact, even at the University of Malta, we now have the training. There's the drama department, there's the dance. So we have seen the arts not just as something which are present in the primary schools, but they have continued to also develop into the secondary school, in tertiary education. And this has really led to it's a vicious circle. The more we have, the better trained the students will be. In fact, that is the problem at the moment with all this, with all COVID. What happens if the training suddenly stops? What happens if, as I know has already happened, some of these artists have now chosen to move onto another career because they can no longer afford to have a career as an artist because there's no careers left. So I think this is something that really needs to be addressed. However, I feel that one of the most important thing that we have to tackle is the fact that arts education is still considered as extracurricular. This word extra, I think, before we manage to convince people, the public, the general public, that it is not at all extra, that it is there, it is the basis of all other education, I don't think we can move much further. So I think this is really what we need to tackle. And I feel that it is still considered extra because whereas the benefits of it cannot be actually identified in a scientific way. We need to establish a language, we need more research in the benefits of arts education, because once that has been established, then we will not reach a situation when there is a pandemic and the arts are put at the bottom of the ladder, and schools have to give up all their the drama studios, all the dance studios for spaces because it's okay, arts can be pushed to the side. Yes. So if the scientific evidence were in place, I think this would not have happened.
Yes, and I think having said that, the work which Arts Council is doing currently is pushing, and also organizations such as MEIA are very much pushing in terms of advocating in favor of arts education and in favor of getting away from this vocabulary which seemed to characterize very much this, especially lately, as you said. In fact, I planned to discuss this later, but actually we can tackle this now. We were referring to it as non-essential, and we all agree that it is not. So I don't know, maybe Marianne, you can give us your thoughts about this, about what happened and what can be done in order to address this situation which Lorraine is mentioning.
In fact, Lorraine was actually mentioning that scientifically maybe we do not have enough research data. In fact, I tend to agree with what she's saying, but I need to state that in the past years, there was a particular scheme which was creative, and it addressed primary and secondary areas. And we did carry out a research study with the University of Malta, and it's amazing, some very interesting results when it comes to that element. So it was very scientific actually, and they looked into students before they actually participated in the creative project, after, etc. So there was a whole study. Of course, we realized that during the process, so it was something like that, okay? So they were highly creative. Their creativity was very strong. They started school, getting involved in other subjects, etc., etc., etc. And their creativity, even though there was the program, the creative program going on, creativity went down. So it's not only, and as well as Mr. Gallia said, it's not only addressing the arts, but also the things that go around it. So, and that's where we're trying to build the bridges. The fact that the extra word, that's terrifying in the sense we need it to be part of the curriculum, an integral part. And it has to start also through the families. We get students like coming to us, and I meet a lot of university students who have info sessions, etc., with loads of university students, and they would like to continue in the arts, whatever arts means, okay? Whether it's classics, it's not necessarily performing arts, it could be literary arts, sort of word art. And they are discouraged because of peers and family. Sort of, what are you going to do with this thing, you know? There is a lot of this going on. It's still existent. It happened in my time, a number of years ago now, and it's still happening today.
Yes.
And it is very, very sad. Why? Because scientifically proven is that arts, people involved in the arts are highly employable in any other sector. So this is where Arts Council also comes in. How? We're trying to create a sector where it's not just the artists and working on their own, but being engaged by other sectors, other entities, because we believe that the artistic mind is necessary, I dare say, everywhere, you know, whether it's construction, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's industrialization. It is the artistic mindset is very important also with other sectors. So it's not only people for the arts, but arts for the people. I keep repeating this very much, and this is becoming a bit of my mantra at the moment, that arts needs to be an integral part of general well-being, because we didn't even start, you know, you mentioned, you asked Mr. Galia to mention benefits. He mentioned 3. I hope you give us 3 chances each now, because I have another 3 to say. I can say it's self-expression, it's communication, you know, it's community, and, you know, feeling there is ownership and identity. So yes, there are lots of benefits when you educate in the arts. I mean, I don't take, maybe I'll join later.
Definitely. And we were mentioning before also the infrastructure and how this has helped in order to support more arts education and to allow more children to have to choose their like at a secondary level the arts as a main subject, no longer in the periphery but as a main subject. And on that note, I would like to introduce Simone Attard in our discussion. So, Simone, maybe you can give us a couple of reactions to what we were discussing so far, and also another point which we mentioned. How do you think that the school that you're head of has actually helped in terms of having more future artists, in terms of linking the children with possible then jobs in the arts at a later stage?
So basically, this is the 4th year that the school is running. It is a normal middle school, secondary school, and there is obviously specialization in 5 different art forms: dance, music, drama, art, and media. All 5 are being taught at school. We also have some affiliations with other institutions, and we're hoping to have even more affiliations of this kind. The students who come into our school, they come in through an audition. So usually there are many more people who would love to be in our school, but our cohort is 48 students each year. It is a very good school in the sense that it is one of a kind, where the students are being taught both in their academic side and in their professional art side. I don't like to have them in two separate ways, in a way, because I would prefer them to be intermingled together. We can't have academic anymore and performing anymore. So the way forward, even in primary school and obviously in secondary and even further up, And there needs to be a system where, as most of the other speakers have said, there needs to be a cross-curricular approach in all the subjects. Why? For example, teaching poetry, it could be taught through drama, through music, through dance. It would really leave an imprint on the students. Unfortunately, why unfortunately? Yes, some people still outside think that music, drama, and dance are the easiest way out to find a career. They don't understand how difficult it is, what it involves, how much sacrifice, how much practice is needed, how much concentration is needed. You have to forget about your private life, your feasts, and so on, but you need to focus on your studies. So if people are brought up in this way to think about all the other subjects by disciplining themselves and also criticizing themselves, their work, they could apply it also to the academic. Unfortunately, there is still a different cut between the academic and the performance. If it had been for example, the children learning when they are young, 3-year-old, even before, they learn nursery rhymes. So through nursery rhymes, they're singing, they're learning English. So why don't we apply music in other subjects? If we were to teach all the subjects, we can really make life easy both for the teachers and both for the students. Unfortunately, teachers are more academic focused, and it's not easy to just stop and think, how can I engage all the students to like my subject? Because every teacher in that way needs to know something about drama, dance, and it's not just that. They need to think, critical thinking. They have to go out of the norm, out of their box, to see how they're going to appeal to the students to make the lessons more nice, more long-term in their minds. You know, they have to remember what was done. I remember what I did when I was quite little. Even when I was taught these nursery rhymes, I still have them imprinted because it was something which I really liked and something which I enjoyed doing. So I internalized the thing. In our school, the focus is on both the academic and the performing. So the students can have a success in 2 careers. They can choose to become advocates, doctors, and so on. And they can also continue, obviously, they are continuing their work in their performing art form. They have 8 lessons during the week, which is obviously helping them to improve, to develop their skills, and so on. Also, with regards to employability, the students are also given opportunities to perform even out of the school. Some students have already made a name for themselves, and some directors, stage directors, know our school, and they give our students better parts in films or stage, and so on. It is very music, art, and music, drama, and dance, especially because art and media are taught in other schools, have to be implanted as from when the students are in primary school. And it shouldn't be just a subject, as I said before. It shouldn't be a subject, and it should be assessed as other subjects. I still hear people say, "Oh, how nice you teach piano! Oh, how nice! That's really easy to do." No, it's not. I can vouch for that. I am a pianist and teacher, accompanist. I have my choirs. I have taught choirs for opera and music, and I can assure you it's not an easy thing at all, but has helped me personally, and that's what I'm trying to enhance in our students. How important is that one needs to focus on art form because they help you to be self-disciplined, have self-control, criticize yourself, to be creative, tolerate other people, other ideas. It's not just you and you and you. Unfortunately, it is the mentality of most Maltese. That's what I want. They need to respect each other. all the time.
Thank
And,
you,
thank
Simone.
you.
I'll have to round up
I
there. I'm
said
sorry.
quite a lot. And
I know that today's session is very, very difficult because there are
yes,
many
okay.
more
Thank
things
you
to say. But thank you very much
for
for that intervention. So, Lorraine, Simone was mentioning kind of the tackling this from a holistic perspective. So the fact that the school is helping both to make these children grow, develop better, but also to help them possibly access careers. So how do you think that this relationship between now these public schools and the private independent ventures is helping the sector more, or isn't it helping at all? What's your take on it?
I really feel that there needs to be more collaboration. We have actually started, we have initiated a process. We have met up with even heads of VPA and with Dr. Fabri from the Education Department, because we feel that collaboration is the way forward. Most of these private schools operate in the afternoon, after school hours. So they have a lot of qualified teachers who are available in the morning, who can easily work. And I think that collaborating with the public sector can help both entities. I know that, and I think Victor mentioned here that, or Simone mentioned that only a certain number of students can actually enter these schools every year because they can only take 48 students at a time. Now, this is because of the lack of space over there. Now, if we manage to find a way of collaborating so that we can, private schools can actually use the premises, the empty premises in the morning, and in that way allow for more training for these students, I think we can give more of the more children around Malta access to something like this, which I know that there is a demand for. I don't know what's going to happen now post-COVID, because obviously I think things are going to slow down a little bit, but I am hopeful that it will regain momentum. So I think that there can be more collaboration, and I feel that one of the benefits of COVID, one of the few, I have been trying to be positive about it as well, is the fact that finally people, artists, have actually got together, and instead of working against each other, have started collaborating. I have seen so much collaborating, people wanting to help each other, people wanting to share ideas about how things can work, even online. There have been so many rooms and groups have opened up, and people all over the world have been sharing resources, have been giving out their scripts with royalty free, you know. So I feel that collaboration is the way forward. We teach our students collaboration, which is one of the benefits of art, and I feel that the trainers also have to be able to collaborate more, because I feel that is the way for one of the way forward in art.
Particularly in a post-COVID scenario, I would say, and I'd like to just question this to all of you. I mean, feel free to comment, but there have been many comments about the negative impacts of the situation on arts education and the fact that possibly we lost a number of children on the way. So the fact that we missed a year and a half or two, we don't know yet, because obviously we're still very much part of the situation. But what do you think? You mentioned collaboration, Lorraine, and I think that's very valid. But are there any other solutions which you propose, which you are also maybe implementing in your schools, both from an independent point of view, the private sector, or from the public sector, to help have a plan, a way forward? Victor, I don't know if you'd like to take this question.
Well, to continue, it's always a question of priority, after all. What happened during the COVID, you know, March last year, it was a sudden for everybody, you know. The education sectors was closed for some time, and were discussions with the social partners how teaching is going keep on. And we spent weeks, if not months, discussing whether they should go online or hybrid or things like that. What I can say in this sector, which I had, is that immediately on the 3rd of March, teachers continued to communicate. Luckily, we had the infrastructure where schools can communicate directly via online, through announcement, through lessons online, and the system that helps tremendously. And I remember during the first month of the closure of all schools in Malta, I was receiving dozens of emails or calls from parents of young children, how appreciative they were that teachers were communicating with their children, just not giving lessons, communicating. The fact that a music teacher or an art teacher was calling home through different media and asking them, how are you and how are you? That was an amazing spirit which we felt in the college. I can understand that not all institutions, especially the private ones, might have the funding to invest in such infrastructure. And now this is serious, because if there is no big investment, not to use another word, investment in this sector, it's pointless saying that it is important, because everybody agrees that the community needs. Look at your country and look in your eyes and see the architecture, how it is whether it is being beautiful or being uglified. And it's all part of our own culture. So investment in this sector is very important. And I agree, we had to work together, because the private sector has got their own infrastructure, which they developed along the years. The state has its own infrastructure. I mean, during the COVID, the measures, we worked together with MEIA, the protocols, remember, and that summer, where not only the social distancing, but we had to invest in a lot of money in persplexes and sanitizing mats and you name it, And I can imagine, I had my son who also go and learn in the local band club. How can a club in a village afford all that money in this infrastructure? So luckily, yes, there are plans. For instance, in Hamrun, where there's the Malta Visual and Performing Arts, together with the School of Music, there are plans for a hub for this sector, and that's where I believe the private sector can contribute as well in there, which includes not only the building of a new drama school and extensions of the Malta Visual Performing Arts halls and things like that, as well as the revamp of the current Malta School of Music, where it comes to soundproofing and things like that. But also, it's a long-term thing. It's not just to have the physical aspects, but also the individual is very important, and that is also very, very, very important. As you know, and in order to accredit a course nowadays, you have to have a very strong internal quality assurance, which goes from the qualifications of teachers to all the other basic things where you run an educational institutions. That is where we can support the private sector, I believe. That we can offer as well. And this private sector can make not only best use of what we have, but also can contribute, because they have, I believe they have much more contact than us with the word out there. We are more focused on the process of learning. The private sector might be much more in touch with the world of work.
So it's a matter of kind of seeing the different resources which you both have, and kind of pooling those together.
As a measure, what we are proposing as a ministry, even which comes out of the feedback provided to the National Culture Policy, is to create a board of governors for this college, which is composed from the people from the sector, from the private sector mainly.
And on that note, I would like to introduce Christabel from Arts Council Malta in the conversation. So, Christabel, maybe a general comment about what you've heard so far and also how this has impacted the way Arts Council is working, in your role are working in relation to education, and how this impacted the strategy and how you're looking at the future of arts and education.
Yes, sure. I'm literally jumping on the seat because obviously I am and nodding very aggressively because I'm agreeing with the conversation so far. And it's really interesting as well. Thank you for creating the space, because sometimes you obviously feel like you're working in a silo, and having these conversations and seeing that this is a general there are general questions and concerns which are across the board, both the public as well as the private sector. Of course, as a public sector, we have an obligation to help the sector and find ways, find the issues, the core issues, and find ways how to tackle this. Now, obviously, it's not easy. In the past 5 years, I believe Arts Council has laid extraordinary groundwork when it comes to the use of arts in education. Marianne mentioned it very well. We have research which is scientific. It's based on the divergent thinking models, and there is actual proof that participation in creative projects has a positive effect on creativity, with the effect being more pronounced the more hours students spend with the artists and creatives themselves. So this shows also the need for continuous partnerships between the private and the public sector, between schools and artists, which is something which we are obviously focusing on. There's also research which suggests that participation in such projects also helps reduce, for example, early school leaving rates, as Mr. Tart was rightly pointing out. The use of art in other subjects is also crucial in promoting education which is equitable and more inclusive for everyone, something which it's more easily relatable. And this, again, going forward from this, so we have the groundwork. We know arts in education works, and we should continue building up on that. And going forward, where do we go? As I think what was mentioned before, maybe in laying this groundwork, we perhaps overlooked the education of the arts. And personally, I don't think there's the need to distinguish arts and education, the use of arts and education, and education of the arts, because these are interlinked. They go together. If we have more people, more students in schools engaging with the arts on a different levels and getting their interest in the arts, this will lead to more artists in the long run. However, for strategic purposes going forward from now on, so that we're sure that we focus on both elements, we are looking at strengthening education in the arts and strengthening the resources, both physical resources, which schools may need, other resources like, I don't know, teaching material, which can be developed in the coming 5 years. Also structural. It's important that we look at this as an ecosystem, and we need to take care of also the physical environment. However, we're also looking at the education of the arts and making sure that this is of a high standard, and people engaging in education of the arts are also recognized as doing something which is extremely beneficial. It's like if you're studying sciences and becoming a scientist, becoming an artist should also have that status, that important status. And this also leads to a third focus, which is communicating these benefits of the arts, these long-term benefits of participating in the arts and being an artist, and there is prestige in that. So going forward, for sure, we are looking at education in the arts and strengthening that with resources, capacity building of education of the arts and raising the standards. We're also possibly looking at recognition of institutes and accreditation, but for sure we're looking at training and mentoring and job shadowing in that area. And thirdly, also communicating on a wider scale how critical it is to have a strong education of the arts and a strong use of arts education in general.
That's very interesting, Christabel, and I think you pointed out quite important points there. Certainly, there is room for more work and more development. We need to stop calling the arts educators within schools peripatetic teachers. We should be definitely, there's room for development there. So I know that Arts Council has been working pretty hard on that level and trying to make a case for why it is important, but it has always been a bit of a struggle, particularly now. I think after or during the COVID situation, it was challenging for very obvious reasons, but hopefully, as you rightly said, there's a way forward on that level too. Thank you, Christabel.
Yes, for sure. If I can add just something,
Of course.
Maybe we can take this opportunity of the pandemic, which obviously the arts in general, but also arts education very drastically. We can also take it as a clean slate and build on from here and then build even stronger than the approach we were taking before. Thank you.
Thank you, Christabel. And I'd like to introduce Rosetta now, Rosetta De Battista, in this conversation. I think Christabel mentioned a number of important things which are pretty close to your work and to what you have been doing in the sphere of education and arts, particularly accessibility, and also focusing on the importance of creativity and innovation at the core of teaching and learning. So, Rosetta, I don't know if you'd like to maybe elaborate a little bit further on that and give us your perspective.
I mean, as I'm listening, I'm really enjoying the conversation. Some points I'd like to sort of reflect on is these challenges of the arts were in and out of human civilization many, many times. So many times before, but many times before, the arts were an integral part of humanity. The Greeks rated it as one of the most integral parts of education. The Middle Ages as well. Those are people who became the statesmen of a civilization. So many, many times the arts were really pushed to the foreground. But there are times as well when they were in the background, and we are living through something that is a bit similar. But all I do want to say, in the broader perspective of humanity, there are times when they were really the foreground and sometimes not. And that always makes me wonder why. What is the reason behind the choice from the powers that be as well to put something in the background? And I think that the arts are one of the strongest means of self-expression, can often have a lot of hidden agendas as well. So to counteract that, and Mr. Galia mentioned, Lauren mentioned, Simone as well, it's coming together. It was lovely to hear Victor talk about 100 years ago, a group of artists got together and shaped the future of the arts. And for many, like the School of Music, for many who pursued it as a career. So in a way, it's coming together that can make the shift happen. That is the power of the people. So I think I'm really grateful that people are, in a way, dismantling the walls. We are quite territorial on a small island, very typical of islanders. And I think this is a real time to join forces it's not us and them, and this is where Marianne Kauki is so right in saying we need to not only across the bridge to other sectors, but learn so much more about our contribution within other sectors. So those conversations have to happen. Myself, in the last few years, I've learned so much from working with different NGOs, discovering much more about our perception, people's perception of the arts as well. So in a way, as Maltese people, as people living on this island and foreigners living here, it's about the mindset. You know, what really struck me when Simone was talking is this extracurricular, the filler of music, you know, that we are in a way extracurricular fringe subjects. If you look it up, I mean, anything that can give you a scholarly route is an academic subject. So actually, the arts need to be talked about as academic subjects. Now, I know you're going to say, but they're not seen that way. But until we use that language, it will never change. So we ourselves need to stop. You know, I was reading the myths that we have in our heads, these victims of artists. Rossini, apparently, if we quantified how rich he was today, ikollu xi 4 Porsches dal-lum, Kiku. He was super wealthy, Verdi as well. We need to heal our own mindset as well, that people in the arts, again, not for financial gain, because not everything is as fulfilling as doing things because you love them, but we are part of this world. You know, do you think all these corporations would do anything without the jingles, without the vision do? So aspects, the space, the shop, how it's designed, what colors, what music, everything is arts. I don't know if, am I stuck?
No, it's fine, we can hear you.
To alter the mindset by becoming much more visible. One last thing I want to say, I believe in the rights of every person to have access. So whether it's a generic exposure, i.e. every child in a school, at primary, at secondary, has to have arts experiences that are, one, of a high value. Many of us over here, some piano teachers as well, we've heard it before. Tija jgħadu jibda dużar, memx għafej teacher tajba. And it always makes me laugh because those are the crucial ages. You need really good teachers at the start. You need really good teachers in all schools and not teachers that are...
Okay, I think now you actually got stuck, Rosetta. But that's what Rosetta was saying actually sums it up all pretty nicely. And Rosetta, if you can still hear us, we can assure you that we were all nodding here and agreeing with your argument. So thank you, thanks for that. Lorraine, I don't know if you'd like to maybe comment on what Rosetta was saying.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I know Rosetta, she's been a real front leader when it comes to arts education, always fighting for education for everybody, inclusive education. I really admire her work, and I know she's done so much good. I think way forward we need to continue on this collaboration, on this way of collaboration, and we need to, I think, also rethink the learning process. I think we need to focus a lot more on the process and not the end product, because after all, this is what we need to teach our children, how to deal with situations, how to change frustration into a piece of music. I mean, this is where art has actually worked, changing emotions, changing behavior, and altering them into something good. So I think we need to focus on that. We also need to make sure that we do not panic our children with we have to catch up because of this lost year of school. All schools all over the world have had this year lost, so our Maltese children are not going to be any worse off than any other children around the world. So I think we have to make sure that we do not panic the children and give them this vent to express themselves, and also convince the leaders that art is important, because where we convince the leaders, then we have also, won the battle. And finally, also, I think I want to end by saying that we also have to look after our teachers. We tend to forget our teachers in all this process. We think about the learners, but not about the teachers. Teachers had to go through such a lot to relearn, to adapt, to think out of the box, to see how they're going to adapt to this new reality. I think they need our support. They need our support in training. As Marianne said, sort of Arts Council is going to, it has schemes to do this. We need to give them the opportunity to collaborate. I really feel that in schools, each school should be paired up with an arts organization, and allow the arts organization to actually work inside the school, work within the school. Children should not see art as something separate. They should see it as something natural.
Exactly.
So by this, again, collaboration, by having the a museum collaborating with a school for a whole year, so I mean, there's so many ideas. I think there are so many people wanting to give so many ideas, and I think, with the Arts Council, sort of being the mediator here, I think a lot of work can be done for the common good of everyone.
And before we move on actually to the concluding remarks by Victor and by Marianne, I would like to share with you a very brief quote which in an interview with musician David Byrne, he said, it was about science, but he said this, and I think it's really interesting. In order to really succeed in the math, in sciences, in engineering, you have to be able to think outside of the box. You have to tackle creative problem solving. Then he goes on to say, a certain amount of arts education doesn't mean that your ambition is to grow up to be a painter, but you can use that kind of thinking and apply it to anything else. And you're better at that. You succeed more and you bring more to the world because you have these abilities that came outside of your discipline. And I think it's really a beautiful quote which makes us reflect and which actually confirms what we have been saying throughout this hour. Victor.
Perfect. And the synergy I need to point this out because the synergy between the arts sector is very important, both for teachers and learners. We can't afford to have specialist schools in music, for instance, and no knowledge on the artistic painters and or dance or drama. And I can see that thanks to the Malta Arts Council and their ministry, where a budget line vote had been passed to my college in order to make an annual production of a high standard. And we are experiencing how important it is for students from the different sectors to realize that it let's give a practical example. We are going to produce a film opera. Okay, so to produce an opera, automatically it comes to your mind music. Mm-hmm. But music students are realizing that there are there's design, there are students for art, there are students in the visual arts who are researching the epic of the time, and this synergy between both teachers and students is what I think is most needed at the moment, because otherwise I'm afraid that we will get into a ghetto of being isolated, and as Rosetta said, we are such a small country, we cannot afford to isolate ourselves.
Exactly. Thank you, Victor. And final comments from Marianne?
Apart from there is loads and loads of work to be carried out, but definitely Arts Council is here to work and work harder, and also thanks to my team, and also as you saw Christa, who is the Education and Development Associate, and she she speaks from her heart, very passionate about her. And I have to say that all the team acts and reacts in this manner when it comes to the respective pillars. Education happens to be dear to me. I do come from an education background, and I can see there is yet lots to be covered. And obviously this needs to happen through research, which also we're starting a new research study with the University of Malta once again when it comes to education in the arts, where we need to study better who are we talking about, what's happening in the arts. It doesn't stop there. When it comes to education in the arts, as somebody mentioned, it needs to be formalized. We're lucky to have a very good example with the public schools when it comes to Malta School of Music, Malta School of Dance and Drama, Drama and Dance, and Malta School of Art. They already have, they're recognized and accredited. And I believe this needs to happen across the board. I mean, we can't have schools that are not recognized or accredited, which, by the way, mean two different things, and they are functioning. On what grounds? We're not sure of their quality. We're not sure. So, talking of quality, we need also to address excellence in the arts. We have a number of talented and committed, because it doesn't attribute just to talent, but also to commitment, of young artists who do not understand what their next step should be. And it could be they know and they don't have the funds to do it. And necessary support needs to address these highly talented, highly committed students and their families, because it doesn't stop with the student. There is the family support as well. So when we're looking other points that I mentioned, when we're looking at collaborations, collaborations are highly important. And as Lauren mentioned very interestingly, that you have the private entities, private arts schools or organizations who are actually within the schools. Yes, wow, that's so interesting, especially now that we're trying also to establish having arts and culture mentors within each primary and secondary school. I have to say that we found lots of support from the Minister of Education, who actually greeted the idea of establishing a person within each primary and secondary school, not on a voluntary basis, no, but somebody who is recognized as being the arts and culture mentor within the school. And that will give us a contact point where we can actually latch. Not to mention that there is also the culture pass, which happens within primary and secondary schools, which had to make a shift this year. And I have to say, COVID-19, as bad as we think it is, it has brought loads of other benefits, I have to say, when it comes to the digital aspect, the digital shift. Finally, we pressed the fast forward button, and I believe that we actually had to catch up. In fact, we offered the scheme that I spoke about, and also Lauren referred to, the arts education scheme, which we had discussed also with MEIA, where private schools, private entities can actually invest in their infrastructure, because we understand that there was this difficulty and it's going to keep happening. And another word that was used but not really opened up on, probably we'll need another session on this, Elaine.
Yes, please.
It's the inclusivity. How inclusive are we when it comes into the arts? And that goes very much with the cultural rights toolkit that we hope to be launching very soon now. And the inclusivity. There are students who have disabilities who we already have an organization which is Opening Doors, who are partners of Arts Council Malta, who are doing great work in this regard, but loads more needs to be done in this regard, where we give a chance. It's not only disability I'm talking about, but also other levels of statuses that we need to attract and engage to actually make arts accessible to all.
That's great, Marianne. And on that note, we have to conclude today's session. I thank you once again for enabling these conversations and all your team at Arts Council Malta. Thank you to our guests today here and on Zoom. Thank you for your work and for your contribution today. So feel free to leave a message on the Arts Council Malta Facebook page if you have any comments or if you would like to discuss this further. See you next month for another session of the ACM Hangouts. Take care.